Imagine waking up one morning and realizing that money no longer means anything. Banks are closed. The numbers on your screen are frozen. The paper in your wallet is just paper again. People look at each other with fear. A loaf of bread feels priceless. The streets are quiet, the shelves are empty. And one question echoes in everyone's mind. What is real value? Is it the gold in your hand? The digits on your phone? Or the promise that something will still matter tomorrow? Humanity once stood at that edge. There was a time when no one had money, yet everyone needed something. Back then, trust itself was the only currency. Picture a wind-swept plain, two small camps facing each other. One brings salt from the coast, packed in leather bags. The other brings dried meat from the hills. "I'll trade my salt for your meat," someone says. A nod, a handshake, a shared meal, and value appears, just for a moment, between two people. But the barter world had a flaw. What if the shepherd didn't need salt today? What if the farmer's grain was too much or not enough? What if winter came early and everyone wanted the same thing? The problem was simple and brutal. Value was unstable and trust was fragile. So humans began to search for something everyone could accept. A bridge between needs, a symbol of worth. Shells that shone like moonlight, stones drilled into beads and strung around the wrist. Bright feathers, rare seeds, pieces of metal. Each object said, "I stand for value," even when no exchange was happening. Slowly, a deeper truth emerged. Value isn't physical, it's a shared belief. It lives between people, not inside things. Around 9000 BC, villages took root along rivers and fertile plains. People settled, planted, harvested. Surplus appeared, grain in clay jars, beans in baskets, animals in pens. For the first time, there was more than enough, and more than enough demanded rules. Excess led to exchange. Exchange required memory. Memory required record. In ancient Mesopotamia, Uruk, Ur, Eridu, temples became storehouses of both grain and trust. A farmer might say, "I owe you this much barley after the harvest." To prove it, he pressed reed stylus into wet clay, etching small marks that dried in the sun. Those symbols were more than numbers. They were trust made solid. Anyone could point and say, "It's written here." A promise that used to live only in the air now lived in stone and clay. Imagine the scene inside a temple hall. Rows of jars, labeled for families, seasons, debts due, and debts forgiven. Scribes whisper totals to one another. A child watches as her mother's name is pressed into clay. That little tablet binds the past to the future. It tells time to behave. But something else was born with those marks. Power. Whoever kept the records could decide what was true. Temples held grain for the gods. Priests became the first accountants. And debt turned from a simple favor into an obligation with a date. For the first time, wealth was more than survival. It was influence over others. Not just food in your storehouse, but lines in a ledger with your name. Across deserts and mountains, other societies tried their own languages of value. Cowrie shells moving along African trade paths. Stone rings on Pacific islands. Cacao beans counted in Mesoamerican markets. Each system worked locally, but none could unite distant strangers for long. The question remained, how can everyone believe in the same thing? How do you make trust travel? Mesopotamia gave us an answer. Records that outlived memory. A promise captured in clay could pass from father to daughter, from one trader to the next. A symbol could cross a city without its maker, and with every tablet stacked and stored, society learned to think in abstractions. Value separated from the object. Time separated from the moment. Trust separated from the voice that spoke it. Historians now see those clay tablets as the first financial ledgers ever created. The rough blueprint of banks, budgets, and balance sheets. Money, in essence, was born before gold. Belief came before currency. Because money, at its core, is not metal, not paper, not even numbers on a screen. It is a story we agree to tell together. A story that turns shells, stones, or printed ink into bridges of trust. That story carried humanity from caves to cities, from whispers at a fire to laws etched in stone. It taught us to save, to plan, to imagine a future, and then to build it. And yet the story was not finished. A question still hung in the air. If symbols could record value, could they also move value across distance, faster than memory, lighter than grain? The answer would come from a small kingdom to the west, where rivers left glittering metal in their beds. There, belief would be pressed into circles you could hold, stamped with a ruler's seal, and traded by people who would never meet. Next on Finance Chronicles, Lydia, 600 BC. The first coin, and the day power found a home in your palm. Humanity had learned to record trust. But trust, carved into clay, was heavy. It could not travel. A merchant could not carry tablets across the desert, nor trade promises written in a language only one city could read. The world needed something solid yet simple, something that carried belief from one hand to another. And so, from the rivers of Western Anatolia, a new chapter in the story of money began. Lydia, the birth of the coin. 600 years before Christ, in a small kingdom called Lydia, a river called Pactolus glimmered with a strange metal, a natural mix of gold and silver known as electrum. Lydian craftsmen learned to weigh and shape this metal into small round pieces. Each was stamped with a royal seal, the mark of King Alyattes. For the first time, value had a face. The king's seal declared, "This piece is worth this much, because I say so." The symbol of trust had become tangible. The word of the ruler replaced the handshake of traders. And so the coin was born, a tiny circle of metal that carried authority, and with it, power. These coins spread quickly through markets and ports. Merchants no longer had to weigh every trade. No need to judge the purity of metal or the honesty of strangers. The seal itself was the promise. Coins made trade faster, made kingdoms richer, and tied people to their rulers in a new way. Because every purchase, every exchange, quietly repeated the same sentence: "I trust the king." The Persians, the Greeks, and the spread of metal trust. When the Persian Empire rose, its kings adopted and perfected the Lydian idea. Darius the Great minted the daric, a golden coin that carried his image across 3 continents. From India to Egypt, soldiers and merchants alike held in their palms the same shining face. For the first time, a coin became a language of empire. It spoke silently of order, law, and strength. The Greeks soon followed. Each city-state minted its own design. Athens with its proud owl, Corinth with its Pegasus, Sparta with its mark of war. These coins became more than currency. They were identity, art, propaganda. Athenian silver spread with trade, carrying not only value but ideas about democracy, philosophy, and beauty. Every exchange whispered a piece of Greek thought into the heart of foreign markets. Rome, power in the palm. Then came Rome, an empire that understood better than any before it how belief could be controlled. Roman emperors stamped their faces onto coins, their titles, their victories, their divinity. A soldier in Britain, a farmer in Syria, a merchant in Africa, all touched the same portrait each day. It was brilliant psychological design. Every purchase was a reminder of who ruled the world. Coins became miniature monuments, tiny billboards for imperial power. In Rome, the mint was as powerful as the sword. But power has two sides, just like a coin. As Rome expanded, wars demanded silver and gold, more than the empire could mine. And so, emperors began to cheat. They mixed cheaper metals into the coins, reducing the silver bit by bit, hoping no one would notice. At first, people didn't. A denarius still looked the same. But value is not in the metal. It's in the trust behind it. And when people lost that trust, the illusion shattered. The first inflation, prices rose. Merchants demanded more coins for the same goods. Soldiers wanted more pay. Farmers raised their prices. And the empire began to spiral. The same coin that once united the Roman world now spread doubt. Inflation, a word we use so easily today, was once a slow, invisible erosion of belief. Rome learned the hard way. You cannot print more trust. Trade, culture, and the global web. Yet even as coins lost their purity, their sound echoed across continents. Markets from Egypt to Gaul, from Carthage to India, rang with the clinking of metal. Money connected strangers who would never meet. It built roads, ports, and cities. It carried culture as much as it carried wealth. A Roman coin could pay for spices from Arabia, wine from Greece, and silk from China. Every trade, every journey was a thread in the first global web. The idea of money had become unstoppable. It no longer belonged to one king or one people. It belonged to humanity itself. The fall of Rome and the lesson of metal. But nothing lasts forever. As the empire weakened, its coins grew lighter, its promises weaker. When Rome finally fell, its currency fell with it. The great imperial mint was silent. Merchants returned to barter, and once again, trust had to be rebuilt. The sound of coins faded, but their memory remained. A memory of power and also of fragility. Metal had given humanity stability, but also temptation. Because once you can make money, you can manipulate it.